2, 1, Start! Der Mond schaut uns an und wir zurück. Der Mond ist über uns, wird uns gehören. Gestern die Welt und heute der Himmel. Denn uns gehört er und die Freiheit fliegt. Mond, Mond, ja, ja. Vereint wir sind unter dem großen Forscher. Mond, Mond, ja, ja. Heute gehört uns die Galaxie. Vorwärts, Brüder, unser Mond ist rot. Wir werden den kleinen Fels erobern. Wir sind diejenigen, die den Himmel beherrschen. Denn wir sind die Größten im Universum. Mond, Mond, ja, ja.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Trey's Models. On this episode, we're going to be doing the Model Collect 1/72 scale Rheintochter 1 on the E50 chassis. Model Collect is a Chinese company. They've been around since 2012, I believe. The moldings on the kit are really nice. Do have some issues with the pour gate on the runner attachments. They're not very well placed in some areas and do kind of remind me of a short run kit in a lot of aspects. The fit on it's not too bad. Get into some fiddly bits with the tracks and the road wheels. Well, we'll get into that later on in the build. Jumping off to building the hull, this fit fairly well. There was a little bit of a fill that needed to be done up in the front where the glacis plate met the lower hull. And then the side fenders. Looking back, I would probably leave these off until after the road wheels were on and the tracks themselves were on. That's another nightmare for later on in the video. And then the back plate with the exhaust went on fairly well. A little bit of a gap in the very back edges that I actually just used some flexible CA from inside the turret opening to fill and just let it drizzle back down in there and then hit it with some kicker. Everything else on the outside of the hull is pretty straightforward. The only issues we run into are coming up next with the road wheel and the tracks. Getting into the road wheels and tracks, this is where I found the kit to be really frustrating. First of all, the axles on the road wheels and part G13, the holes do not fit. So you have a choice of either drilling it out or sanding the axles. I chose the latter and sanded the axles. So I know I didn't over drill the receptacle and make it too deep. However, when you push those axles into place, if you push them all the way in, the tracks are not going to line up with the drive wheels. They go in too far. My suggestion would be to use a piece of the straight run of the track to line the actual drive axle to the road wheel and make sure that the teeth line up. I actually wound up having to cut some of the actual guide teeth off to get everything to line up. You can't see it. It was just frustrating. Looking back, going a little slower and doing some better dry fitting on my part would have helped, but it is what it is. The other problem was where the mold gates were on the runners. They dumped them out right in between the drive teeth on the front drive sprockets. Cleanup on that was painstaking to say the least. One little slip of the knife and I lost one of the teeth and had to make one from scratch. And then on to the tracks. And that is another point of contention with this kit. If you follow what the kit says and count the links out, you're going to run short. I actually wound up adding 3 more to the bottom of the drive sprocket on the front, 3 on the top, and 2 top and bottom back respectively. So best I can tell you is to dry fit everything a couple of times. You really can't see the top run on the tracks, so it's not completely in place. You're not going to be able to tell unless you really get up under there with a flashlight and a mirror, and who's going to do that? But that was probably the most frustrating part of the kit. It's doable, frustrating, take your time, dry fit. Putting the tracks and the road wheels behind us, I'm going to move on to the launch rail system for the rocket itself, or the missile. This went together fairly well. There wasn't any big surprises here. Everything fit well. Nothing really out of sorts with this part of the build. The missile itself, the fins are a little fiddly. The attachment points aren't the best in the world. They're not hateful. I've worked with worse. But just take your time, line everything up. And that's the key. The fins, you look down the nose and look from different angles and make sure you got it lined up properly. There was nothing really out of sorts with that part of the build at all. With the build complete, we move on to the painting and the weathering. I based everything with a semi-gloss Testors black enamel, and then came back with Vallejo and did a base tan on it. Then came back with the Vallejo again with the Harry stick, and just randomly did some camo that I thought maybe would look cool for a what-if project. Probably not very authentic, but I thought it fit the bill. Everything else went along pretty smoothly after I got the base camo down. I came back and gave it a pin wash with some AK panel liner, and then a light weathering with some watered down Vallejo. Light tan just to give it kind of a dusting on the bottom, kind of trailing back up. Rust effects on the exhaust where it was appropriate, and also drilled out the end of the exhaust tubes. And other than that, it was just to seal it down. I didn't use the decals on the from the kit. They're way out of register as one of the worst sets of decals I've ever seen come out of a kit. But being as it was a what-if project and the conditions that were at the time, it's plausible that there weren't any markings on it coming out of the factory anyway. So that's what I'm going with. Now, this is a total what-if project, but the actual missile was actually produced by Rheinmetall Borsig. It was called the Rheintochter, which basically translates to Iron Maiden. It was supposed to be an anti-aircraft missile with a 2-stage solid fuel booster. The problem was it just didn't quite get to the altitude it needed to be useful. There was another variant that was in development with liquid fuel engines, but I think only like 3 of those were actually test fired. And it just did not come to fruition before the end of the hostilities. Moving on to the actual base that it's on, the E50 Panzer was a paper Panzer that was never got past the blueprint stage. It was supposedly going to be a replacement for the Panther. The running gear was a little different. It most likely would have been powered by a 12-cylinder HL234 connected to a hydraulic 8-speed gearbox. What gun it would have had basically is up to anybody's guess. A sure bet probably would have been the 88, but I think with all the development that was going into it, they would have went with something a little more beefier. I think a 105 was in development at the time. Maybe that would have been a fit for it if it would have fit in that tiny turret. Well, the frustrating parts aside from this build, it was really enjoyable. And it's even more fun to take liberties with the paint schemes on these what-if projects. There's a couple of things that, yeah, I'm going to armchair quarterback this to death because there's a couple of things that really bother me with this. It's really cool. Got some good eye candy going on. Really, in my mind, the gun shields up on the front would have been very needed for something like the Flakverling, where they did use them against ground targets and small arm fire was an issue. I really don't think that would have been something that would have been on this particular thing. Also, the choice of the chassis for the actual missile system, really, I think they probably would have used something more along the lines of a Panzer IV, like the Wirbelwind or the Ostwind. Let me know what you guys think. It's a cool thing, and we can sit here and do the what-if thing all day long, but a couple of fine points on it without taking the fun out of it. But still a fun project, and the what-if stuff's always good because it gives you a little bit more leeway with your creativity. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. And as always, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Vorwärts, Brüder, unser Mond ist rot. Himmel beherrschen, denn wir sind die Größten im Universum.
Well, thanks for watching. Please hit that like button and subscribe. And I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Y'all be good to each other, and we'll see you on the next one.
Ja,